You told yourself you'd just check one notification. Maybe it was a text, maybe it was nothing at all, just the dull reflex of your thumb pressing that familiar icon. And then 30 minutes vanished. You didn't decide to spend those 30 minutes scrolling. You didn't weigh your options and think, yes, this is the best use of my time right now. It just happened. Like falling asleep, except you weren't resting. You were somewhere else entirely, suspended in a stream of content you won't remember by tomorrow morning. The irony is that you've done this before. Many times. You know exactly how it ends. That strange, hollow feeling when you finally put the phone down, like you just ate an entire meal but somehow feel hungrier than before. That flicker of guilt. And maybe you've tried the usual advice. Set a screen time limit, delete the app, turn your phone to grayscale, put it in another room, and maybe it worked. For a day, maybe two. But then you found yourself right back in the scroll, because the problem was never really about the phone. So let's talk about what the problem actually is, and then let's talk about 8 ways to address it that you've probably never heard before. Not because they're complicated, but because they require you to look at something most advice tells you to ignore. What's happening inside you the moment before you pick up the phone. Most people think doom scrolling is a bad habit, and it is technically, but calling it a habit is like calling insomnia lying in bed. It's accurate, but it misses the entire point. Doom scrolling is not primarily about content consumption. It's about state change. Think about the last time you started scrolling without meaning to. Were you bored? Anxious? Avoiding something you needed to do? Sitting with a thought that made you uncomfortable? Or maybe you weren't feeling anything in particular, and that blankness itself felt unbearable. What your brain was doing in that moment was reaching for the fastest emotional exit it could find. Not because the content on your feed is so extraordinary, but because the act of scrolling itself creates a specific neurological effect. Every new post, every new image, every new headline is a tiny roll of the dice. Your brain doesn't know what's coming next, and that uncertainty, that randomness, triggers what neuroscientists call a dopamine prediction error. Your brain releases dopamine not when you find something good, but in anticipation that the next thing might be good. It's the same mechanism that keeps people pulling the lever on a slot machine. Not the winning, the almost winning, the what if the next one is the one. Which is exactly why willpower-based solutions don't work for very long. You can't fight a feeling with a rule. You have to change the system. Here are 8 ways to do that. 1. Make scrolling too honest. Here's something strange about doom scrolling. You're almost never fully aware that you're doing it. It operates in a kind of cognitive twilight, not quite conscious, not quite unconscious. You know you're scrolling, but you're not really watching yourself scroll. The moment you bring full awareness to the behavior, it starts to feel different. So try this. The next time you catch yourself mid-scroll, don't stop, but start narrating what you're doing. Internally, honestly. I'm looking at a stranger's vacation photos. I don't know this person. I don't care about this trip. I'm swiping. Now I'm watching a video of someone reacting to another video. I don't know why. I'm still here. I'm looking at a headline designed to make me anxious. It's working. I'm not going to read the article. I'm swiping again. This sounds silly. It might even feel uncomfortable. That's the point. Doom scrolling survives in the dark. It relies on you not quite paying attention to what you're doing. When you narrate the behavior in real time, you drag it into the light. You force your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-awareness and decision-making, to engage with what your limbic system has been running on autopilot. And in that friction between awareness and impulse, the spell breaks. Psychologists call this metacognitive awareness, thinking about your own thinking. And it is one of the most powerful disruptors of automatic behavior that exists. You don't need an app for it. You don't need to lock your phone in a safe. You just need to watch yourself with uncomfortable honesty. 2. Intentionally doom scroll, but with a timer of awareness. This one sounds counterintuitive, so stay with me. One of the reasons doom scrolling has such a grip on you is that it's forbidden. You know you shouldn't be doing it. And that guilt, that resistance, actually makes the behavior more magnetic. Psychologists call this ironic process theory, the idea that trying not to think about something makes you think about it more. Tell yourself you can't scroll, and scrolling becomes the only thing your brain wants to do. So instead of resisting, try scheduling it. Give yourself 10 minutes where you are supposed to scroll. But here's the key. You must remain fully conscious the entire time. No zoning out, no twilight state. You scroll with the same deliberate attention you'd bring to reading a book or having a conversation. Notice what you see. Notice how each post makes you feel. Notice the exact moment your brain starts reaching for the next thing before you've even finished processing the current one. What usually happens is fascinating. The scrolling becomes boring. Not because the content changed, but because the unconscious trance that made it feel compelling is gone. You remove the autopilot, and without autopilot, the feed is just noise. This is how you reveal the trick behind the magic. You don't stop the show. You walk backstage. 3. Create emotional checkpoints. This might be the most important one on this list, so I want you to really hear it. Before you open any app, any social media platform, any endless feed, pause for exactly 3 seconds and ask yourself one question. What am I trying not to feel right now? That's it. You don't need to journal about it. You don't need to meditate. You just need to ask the question honestly and wait for the answer. Because there is almost always an answer. I'm anxious about that email I haven't replied to. I'm bored and I don't want to sit with the boredom. I just had a conversation that left me feeling unsettled and I don't want to examine why. I'm lonely and I don't want to admit that to myself. Doom scrolling is, at its core, a form of emotional avoidance. It's the digital equivalent of leaving the room when a difficult conversation starts. And the tragic part is that it works, temporarily. It does take the edge off. It does numb the feeling, but it never resolves it. So the feeling comes back, and you scroll again, and the feeling comes back, and you scroll again. And slowly, without realizing it, you lose the ability to process your own emotional life. You become a person who responds to every internal discomfort by reaching for a screen. Not because you're weak, but because you never learned that the discomfort was trying to tell you something. The 3-second checkpoint interrupts this cycle. It doesn't stop you from scrolling. It just makes sure that if you do scroll, you're choosing it rather than fleeing into it. 4. Turn your feed into friction, not pleasure. Your algorithm is designed to learn what you can't resist and then serve you more of it. That's not a conspiracy. It's a business model. The more precisely your feed matches your impulses, the longer you stay, the more ads you see, the more money the platform makes. You are not the customer. You are the product being refined. But here's what most people don't realize. You can reverse engineer this. You can deliberately train your algorithm to become less addictive. Start following accounts that post long, thoughtful, slow content. Follow historians, philosophers, scientists who write paragraphs instead of punchlines. Engage with content that requires effort to consume. Stop liking and watching the things that give you instant dopamine hits. The outrage bait, the drama, the perfectly engineered 15-second clips designed to make you feel something before you've had time to think. Within a week or two, your feed will shift. It will become less instantly gratifying. There will be more friction, more resistance, more moments where your brain says, "This requires effort," and loses interest. And that's exactly the point. You're not trying to make your feed better. You're trying to make it less compelling. Because a feed that requires effort to consume is a feed that can't hijack your attention. You're removing the variable reward system that kept you pulling the lever. You're making the slot machine boring. And a boring slot machine is one you can walk away from. 5. Exploit boredom instead of escaping it. There's a reason boredom feels so intolerable now in a way it didn't 20 years ago. Your brain has been trained to expect constant stimulation. Every idle moment, every gap in your day, every pause between activities has been filled with content. Waiting in line? Scroll. Commercial break? Scroll. Can't sleep? Scroll. Your brain has lost its tolerance for low stimulation states, and so the moment stimulation drops below a certain threshold, it panics. It sends urgent signals. Do something. Check something. Find something. And you obey. Every time. But boredom is not a problem to be solved. Boredom is a signal that your brain is ready to do something meaningful. Creativity researchers have known for decades that boredom is the precursor to original thought. When your brain has nothing external to process, it turns inward. It starts making connections, generating ideas, processing experiences. This is called the default mode network, and it's the neurological foundation of imagination, self-reflection, and insight. But it only activates when you stop feeding your brain external stimulation. So the next time you feel the pull to scroll out of boredom, try something radical. Do nothing. Literally nothing. Sit with the boredom. Let it wash over you. It will feel awful for about 2 to 3 minutes. Your brain will scream at you, and then something will shift. A thought will emerge, an idea, a memory, a feeling you didn't know you had. Your brain will come back online in a way that scrolling never allows. You're not just resisting a habit, you're reclaiming a cognitive capacity that has been slowly eroded. 6. Use identity-based disruption. Most people frame the problem of doomscrolling as a behavioral issue. I need to stop doing this thing. And so they focus on the behavior, how to stop, when to stop, what to do instead. But behavioral change that isn't rooted in identity change almost always fails. You can force yourself to stop scrolling for a while, but if you still see yourself as someone who struggles with scrolling, you will return to it. Because we act in accordance with who we believe we are. The shift that actually sticks is not, "I'm trying to scroll less." It's, "I'm someone who protects my attention." That's not a semantic trick. It's a fundamentally different operating system. When scrolling is a behavior you're trying to change, every moment is a test of willpower. But when protecting your attention is part of your identity, the decision is already made before the temptation arrives. You don't have to decide in the moment whether to scroll. You already know the answer because you already know who you are. James Clear wrote about this in the context of habits, but it applies with particular force here. Every time you put the phone down, you're not just avoiding a bad habit. You're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you choose to sit with discomfort instead of escaping into your feed, you're reinforcing an identity. And over time, that identity becomes self-sustaining. You stop scrolling not because you're disciplined, but because it no longer fits who you are. 7. Interrupt the loop mid-scroll. This is a small technique with disproportionate power. Most advice about doomscrolling focuses on prevention, stopping before you start, or reflection, thinking about it afterward. But very few strategies target the middle, the moment when you are actively scrolling, deep in the trance, thumb moving on autopilot. Here's the practice. When you catch yourself scrolling, don't put the phone down. Don't close the app. Just stop your thumb. Freeze. Stay on whatever post you happen to be looking at. And hold that stillness for 10 seconds. What you'll notice is that your brain immediately becomes uncomfortable. It wants the next thing. It's reaching forward, anticipating the next hit of novelty. And you're denying it. Not by removing the phone, but by stopping the motion while the phone is still in your hand. You're breaking the loop from the inside. This works because of how habit loops function. A habit has 3 components: a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is the emotional trigger. The routine is the scrolling. The reward is the tiny dopamine hit from each new piece of content. When you freeze mid-scroll, you keep the cue and the routine active, but you withhold the reward. You create a glitch in the system. And every time you create that glitch, the habit loop weakens. Not because you avoided it, but because you disrupted its internal mechanics. Do this enough times and something remarkable happens. The automatic quality of scrolling begins to dissolve. It becomes more conscious, more effortful, more visible. And conscious behaviors are behaviors you can choose to change. 8. Replace the feeling, not the action. This is the one that ties everything together. Most people try to replace scrolling with another activity. Instead of scrolling, I'll read a book. Instead of scrolling, I'll go for a walk. Instead of scrolling, I'll do something productive. And these substitutions work for a while, but they often feel hollow, forced, like you're doing the right thing for the wrong reason. And eventually you drift back to the scroll because the replacement never addressed the actual need. The key is to identify what emotional need scrolling is meeting and then find a way to meet that need directly. If you scroll because you're lonely, the solution isn't to read a book. It's to call someone, to be in the presence of another human being, even briefly. If you scroll because you're overstimulated and need rest, the solution isn't to go for a run. It's to actually rest, to lie down, to close your eyes, to give your nervous system what it's asking for. If you scroll because you crave novelty and mental stimulation, the solution isn't to do nothing. It's to engage with something genuinely interesting, a documentary, a conversation, a problem worth solving. The reason this works is that your brain isn't actually addicted to scrolling. It's addicted to the emotional state that scrolling provides. And if you can provide that state through healthier means, the grip of the scroll loosens on its own. You're not fighting the craving. You're satisfying it, honestly. Here's what I want you to sit with as this video ends. Everything we've talked about, the dopamine loops, the emotional avoidance, the identity shifts, the algorithmic manipulation, all of it points to a single, deeper truth. Doomscrolling is not really about your phone. It's about your relationship with your own inner life. It's about whether you're willing to feel what you're feeling, think what you're thinking, and be where you are, or whether you'll keep reaching for the nearest exit every time reality gets uncomfortable. And the goal here was never to make you feel guilty about scrolling. Guilt is just another uncomfortable feeling you'll try to scroll away from. The goal is something quieter and more important than that. It's about regaining agency, Not control, because control is rigid and brittle and breaks under pressure. Agency, the calm, clear ability to notice what you're doing and choose whether to continue. Because here's the thing, most people never fully grasp. You think you're consuming content when you scroll. But the truth is closer to the opposite. Your attention is being consumed. Your time is being consumed. Your capacity for depth, for presence, for genuine engagement with your own life is being consumed, one swipe at a time. And the real question was never how many hours you spend on your phone. The real question is, how much of your life are you giving away without ever being asked? The answer to that question is yours to decide. But you can only decide it if you're paying attention.